Madam Colleague. It's an absolute pleasure to be here with you this afternoon. And first of all, let me extend my appreciation to the National Institute of Disaster Management, the National Center for Disease Control of the Government of India, and also the US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention India Country Office for inviting WHO Regional Office to be a part of this webinar series. So thank you very much for that. And let us share a few thoughts from my end with regard to this Public Health Operations Center. Next slide, please. So Anil Bola and I will do a joint presentation. We will initially take you through some of the concepts of public health emergency operations centers, share a little bit of PHEOCs in the Southeast Asia region, and finally introduce the framework for PHEOC of WHO. Next slide, please, Anil. Thank you. So all of us are involved in emergency preparedness and response. And if you hear the word emergency operations center, and if you close your eyes, it basically, the thoughts take you to a room where you have a very busy room, where you have a lot of people, screens, monitors, maybe TVs running, telephones ringing, people walking here and there. There's busy discussions going on, sometimes even a little bit chaotic sometimes. So this is the kind of picture that we get if we talk immediately, if we hear the word emergency operations center. And actually, there are many concepts, principles, practices, protocols behind this picture that you visualize when you hear the word EOC. The Public Health Emergency Operations Center to us is basically a tool in the broader public health emergency management system of any context. And it's basically a tool which integrates the health services into the overall national or subnational, whatever the context is, the contextual emergency management model. And though we initially get the initial feeling that this is during response, the PHEOC concept and its functions are beyond the response phase and the recovery phase, but it's also throughout the entire spectrum of emergency management. It's basically a few thoughts on EOCs. So it's basically a location where plans are made for response, where resources are pooled, and certain emergency management functions are performed. But initially, though we think it's a physical location, the last 2.5 years have taught us that it can be completely a virtual space. And also for WHO, we all know about the international health regulations, and public health emergency operations centers is a core requirement under the National Emergency Preparedness Framework under the IHR. It's an information center where this information feeds into strategic decision making and provides the basis or the platform for the coordination. So overall, the EOC is, despite that very busy picture you have of a room, it's basically a collection of many things. It's a collection of people, infrastructure, protocols, etc., basically to create an effective way to achieve coordination among agencies or partners while responding to an emergency. Next slide, please. There are many objectives of establishing and implementing a public health emergency operations center. These are some among the many such objectives. The first one is basically it provides the platform for operational decision making in a timely and an event-specific manner. It provides the platform for communication and coordination with response with partners, coordination with partners, developing response plans. It is basically the platform for data and information management, from collection to collation to analysis and presentation. It's a platform where you deploy response resources. Resources are mapped and then they're deployed. And also a platform where you monitor the financial commitments and provide administrative services, which are essential in any part of the emergency response. Next slide, please. Yes, one more. There's a diagram there with me. So like Rajiv mentioned, PHEOCs is closely related to the incident management system. If you can, yes, please, thank you. So the incident management system and public health emergency operations center are two concepts that go very close hand in hand. We cannot talk about one without the other, essentially. And incident management system is basically the foundation you create to respond, be it a small scale emergency, a large scale emergency, emergency of any hazard, all hazards. Basically, you need some kind of an incident management system to respond. It's a critical part of the public health emergency management broader program. And the Public Health Emergency Operations Center basically provides a platform that helps the IMS to function. So these two are basically two concepts which are very tightly associated. And here I have just mentioned 5 minimal or critical functions within the incident management system that is supported by PHEOCs. This can be horizontally or vertically expanded based on the requirement, length and breadth of the emergency, context, as well as the need. Now, for example, for WHO, we, along with these critical 5 functions, we also have a function of partnerships, because for us, partnerships is critical. And so that is just a brief about the IMS and the relationship and the connection with the PHEOC, because these two are essentially very closely linked. Next slide, please. Yes, if you can press one more time, Anil. So the role of one, two, three. Yes, 3 more times. One more. Thank you. So the PHEOC is basically a part of this multi-layered and multi-stakeholder broad emergency management, broader national or subnational level framework. As you know, at the strategic or the policy level, you have the higher level coordination groups, the steering committees, policy groups, etc., which generally comes under the mandate of national disaster management authorities. And below that, in the next level, the operational level, where you get a lot of emergency operation centers. And the Public Health Emergency Operation Center of national or subnational level is basically, that's where it fits into. And there is very strong horizontal collaboration with the other EOCs based on the emergency and the need. For example, the civil defense, the military, it could be the irrigation, it could be water supply, I mean, whatever the partner is as relevant to the emergency. And also, there's another lower level, the more tactical level, the field level, where you can also establish public health emergency operations centers based on the need to coordinate with the field level emergency operations centers of other sectors. So for any public health emergency operations center network to function, it has to collaborate very closely horizontally as well as vertically. Though PHEOCs could be within the health sector, it needs close collaboration with all the other sectors as well. And these are some of the fundamental things that we need to remember when we go through the framework. Next slide, please. So just to share a few in the region, what have happened and where things are and how we have also supported and worked with our partners and member states in strengthening health emergency operations centers in the region. WHO has been working in this area for over a decade and advocating for the establishment of health emergency operations centers at national and subnational level. And several regional and national level workshops, meetings, capacity building activities have been carried out extensively. As you know, for WHO in our Southeast Asia region, we have 11 country officers, and all 11 country officers, there are public health emergency operations centers at national level. And in many, you have subnational level health emergency operations centers as well. They look very different to one another. These have been basically set up tailor-made to the context and based on the needs and the requirements. And even for us within our organizations, as a part of our readiness and business continuity planning, the processes related to public health emergency operations have been set in place quite strongly. And during the last 2 years, I think this entire network came into the picture where this became the heart of all operations in every and any context across our region. Here I have just shown a few pictures from some of the different contexts. As you will see, they look different. Even the layout is different, but all of them serve basically the same functions. On your left, you see the National Public Health POC from Sri Lanka. On the right picture, you see the Thailand Health Emergency Operations Center. The next one, please. On the left here again, you see the National POC from Maldives. And on the right top, you see from Cox's Bazar, where at a very tactical level, there's a public health emergency operations center, and the layout is completely different to the national centers. In the right bottom, you see EOC from Nepal. Based on the context and the need, it's basically situated in a container. And it's also, but whatever shape, size it may take, basically it the functions, operations, SOPs, the human resources, all basically follow the same fundamental principles. With that, let me go to the next slide where I would like to share a video with you. This is a fairly old video. In 2018, it was created, which will give you a glimpse of HEOC, how we have been advocating for quite some time. If you can play that, please, Anu. Sound you might have to reduce. Increase, please.
Ma'am, as the video, there is no audio in the slideshow mode, so we will be directly playing that video.
Okay, fine. Thank you. Thank you very much, Anil. So this is a video which we had done a few years back when we were advocating for the establishment of PHEOCs across the region. And with that, we come to the second part of the presentation where I invite my colleague Anil Bola to take you through the PHEOC framework very briefly. Over to you, Anil.
Dr. Bhola, are you there? As we are not able to hear you.
Anil, you're on mute.
Okay, so now am I audible?
Yeah, yes, sir, you are audible now.
Okay, so thanks, Sugi, for giving insight in incident management system and public health emergency operations center. Greetings to all the participants. Now, taking this talk further, it's quite obvious to all those who have worked in emergencies and are responsible for emergency response operations that health emergency operation centers are very critical for timely, effective, and well coordinated emergency response. To have that kind of PHEOC, to establish it, to run it, maintain it, and to get the maximum output through these centers. So what we needed to have a global guidance document. And next slide, please. So that's what WHO came up through wider consultation and systemic review of literature and existing practices across different regions, different countries. From 2012 to 2015, all these happened, and then in November 2015, the global framework for a public health emergency operation center came. So it was to standardize all the processes and all the components that should be in the PHEOC. So this is a guidance document which is good for establishing these public health emergency operation centers and for the guidance of member states to set it up at national level or at subnational level. And in the beginning, Rajiv also hinted upon that even this existing guidance document is at the stage of revision. So hopefully, learning from the COVID-19 pandemic, we may have updated guidance document on it. Next slide, please. So recognizing that the role of this framework is to provide high-level management-oriented guidance, and that in-depth technical guidance is needed to support it, the Emergency Operation Center Network convened two working groups meeting in October 2016 and March 2017 to develop two further technical handbooks that you can see in the screen. These handbooks were released in 2018. The third book is still under development. So the first one is to give guidance on policies, plans, procedure that should be in place at national level for setting up these PHEOC. And second is to maintain and upgrade training and capacity building for those who will run it and conducting simulation exercises, etc. So all those procedures are elaborated in these handbooks. The third one is being developed, so it is in process after learning from different experiences of setting up PHEOC in different countries and different context. Next slide, please. So in summary, we will take all these components that you can see on the screen, which are essential elements of the framework on PHEOC. And what Sugi mentioned, that based on incident management system, the PHEOC establishes sections and subordinate units within the emergency operation center as needed to manage the incident at hand. So it depends from one public health event or incident to another, and depends on the type of emergency, whether it is due to natural hazards or due to disease outbreak, or it is a mix of that complex emergency, flood in uh, in a setting where a surge of COVID-19 cases are already happening. So it may range from small scale response coordination to the larger response operations. So next slide, please. We take it one by one. So legal authority. So this has to be, it has to be through some government directive or a policy by the national government. It has to be invested in the PHEOC. It will allow an entity to oversee the health emergency program and the planning and implementation of a PHEOC. So the legal authority can be invested in a public health department or ministry or other agency to manage public health emergency. So it may vary from country context, and also the level whether it is a national PHEOC or subnational PHEOC. So depending on the context. And this authorization by the government or a directive will assist in or will elaborate for emergency coordinations for different public health emergencies. It will also clarify different roles and responsibilities of the experts from different sectors who will be participating in the emergency response coordination through the PHEOC, and all those mechanisms, SOPs, technical guidelines, and checklist that should be there available in the PHEOC. Next slide, please. Policy group, the second core component. The composition of the policy group may be addressed within the legal mandate for the PHEOC, as I said in the previous slide, or as a separate policy, but should be established prior to an incident. So this should be already in place. For example, in the ongoing COVID-19 context in India, we had this national COVID-19 task force. So that was kind of advisory policy group, and the policy group provides high-level policy guidance on overall management of the emergency and facilitates interagency and interjurisdictional intersectoral coordination. It is also responsible for endorsing requests from external resources and assistance, and initiating requests for assistance from more senior level of government or donors or international aids. So that add values to the PHEOC maintenance and running. Next slide, please. Steering committee is more like an operational group that will run day-to-day activities when PHEOC is activated for any health emergencies. In some settings, the policy group itself can act like steering committee. So it depends on the resources available in a country or in a particular setting. And as it will be highly engaged for running of the PHEOC, emergency response operations. So this committee will decide what should be the size, type and scope of the intended PHEOC. They will decide what will be the structure of the incident management team, and they will pull in different expertise uh, in order to respond to a particular health emergencies. And they will keep a tab also on different key performance indicators specific to a emergency response. So they will be responsible for developing monitoring and evaluation plan. Next slide, please. So when a PHEOC is activated for a particular hazard or a health emergency or a complex emergency, so how it starts? So initially, we need to have the risk assessment, situational analysis in the acute phase of the emergency response. We should have an idea about the prevailing hazards, vulnerabilities, exposure of people, and existing coping capacities of the affected community. WHO also does 4Ws mapping, which is like who is working on what, where, and since when. It's about the stakeholders and partners in the field. So that is to have an insight about the existing resources in terms of humans, health emergency logistics, or expertise available in the field. And after learning all these things, then humanitarian needs and priorities are also assessed. Uh, Under the impact of any health emergency, the health needs and priorities of the affected communities may change. So in order to develop a emergency response plan, we need to have an insight on the changed needs and priorities. And also uh, for the national health emergency operation plan, we also need to have this kind of information to feed in. So planning through PHEOC is here what we can feel that incident management system is put into action or put into practice. A PHEOC operates on three types of plans. The first one, the PHEOC plan, it is as I mentioned how emergency response plan uh, is prepared, and then in order to have a regular PHEOC plan that uh, maintains, sustains, and runs it, activate or deactivate it, we need to have the response manual. So this first plan elaborates all these things, and it may have annexures, checklist, SOPs, or different forms that are used to coordinate an emergency response through the EOC. And event specific or hazard specific response and management plan pertains to identified and prioritized list of threats and hazards in a particular country context. And that is through all these rapid risk assessment or situational analysis, and a action plan through PHEOC that is incident or health emergency specific. So uh, this may vary from natural hazards to disease outbreaks or other complex emergencies, or uh, so depending on the emergency that we are dealing with. So what is required, and what strategic intervention should be there, what uh, type of experts we need to deploy, what health emergency logistical requirements are there in the field. So this action plan will have all those components, and then it is put into implementation. Next slide, please. So this slide tells about the information system and infrastructures in a PHEOC. So usually we have a SharePoint that could be virtual, or it could be a physical repository that all those involved in running of an emergency response through the center can access. So in the emergency setting, in any context, two types of information and data and information flow. The first is relating to a particular event. If it is a disease outbreak, then maybe epidemiological information. And another type of information and data that we find in the response operations are more kind of generic, uh, ranging from demographic, population affected information, geopolitical security, and transport related information for that particular context, and also information relating to emergency logistics and partners, stakeholders working in the field, and progress made so far and the challenges, etc. So depending on the information and how it is processed, we also need to make a decision in the PHEOC that this type of information will be handled by this type of expert, and the technical epidemiological information will be held by epidemiologist or health expert. So there are different situation reports or epidemiological bulletins. So all these decisions are taken in the PHEOC. The frequency of all this release of this in processed information is decided. So the focus in the emergency setting that we should prioritize that the existing health information system should be tapped, and there shouldn't be any separate or standalone information system. We shouldn't encourage implementation of such a separate system until unless the existing surveillance system is completely damaged during a complex emergency. Next slide, please. So this talks about what we need in a physical PHEOC. So mainly a dedicated space which should be easily accessible and should be also friendly for differently abled experts. And you have seen the pictures in the previous slides. Information technology and telecommunication equipment, so depending on the needs, and sometimes we need to have the satellite phone also in certain context when you think that it is the acute phase of the emergency and communication should not be hampered in any way. The space which is labeled PHEOC should be secure, should be safe, should be confidential. So information should not just be available to anybody, and it should not be just open for anybody. So the thing is that those responsible for running it and working in stressful environment and have to deliver response interventions in a standard way, and also honoring the deadlines as per the WHO emergency response framework. So those functions should continue without any interruption. and bare minimum what is required, there should be a dedicated facility manager and a telecommunication expert. Next slide, please. So this shows a comparison between three possible modes of or modalities of public health emergency operation centers: virtual PHEOC, physical PHEOC, and hybrid PHEOC. So virtual PHEOC, I'm sure many of you uh, are fully aware now that uh, these kind of POCs were run during acute phase of COVID-19 pandemic. So most of the incident management team or incident management support team or the national level or sub-national level task force in countries, they had this virtual PHEOC. So it shows comparison across cost, access, safety, and data security. So you can see, I don't have to say each and everything on this. So physical PHEOC, we should have. The best seems to be now learning from the COVID-19 pandemic that hybrid PHEOC is good, but there are costs to each. Which virtual seems very cheap, not expensive, and physical PHEOC, we need to consider the non-recurring cost, the cost in that we require for establishing it in the beginning, and also recurring cost to run it and to maintain it. And accessibility, you can see, you are aware about the virtual, easily accessible, physical. So physical PHEOC, it should be in-person meetings, and all these IT equipment, screens or laptops, everything should be there. And for hybrid, it depends on the needs, when you want to use it as a virtual or when you want to use it as a physical space for EOC. And safety, yeah. So seems like good when high threat pathogens, communicable disease outbreak happens, then the virtual PHEOC is the best way to go for. And in physical PHEOC, because there will be proximity and people, there may not be some PHEOC's space may not be adequate enough to accommodate all the experts needed for a particular emergency. So there is a risk, health risk of if someone is carrier of any pathogen, then yeah. So on data securities, for virtual PHEOC, we follow cloud. We rely on that. Physical PHEOC, we can have in-house server in the centers. So that is good, but it also needs to be maintained. And hybrid, we can use commercial cloud services and data hosting server in the center itself. So both possibilities are there. So next slide, please. Yeah, for training and exercises. So even before a PHEOC is activated, so we may identify uh, different staff in Ministry of Health or wherever a PHEOC is set. So all those staff may have different roles and responsibilities in case of any emergencies, and they may have a skill set, but all those skill set and training uh, capacities, existing capacities, they need to be upgraded or updated time to time. For that, we the PHEOC manager or who runs it should have a training calendar in place, and some identified online courses or on-site courses should be used to train. Or sometimes we get the new new staff or new focal point for a particular area to look at. So we have to train them. So, and in order to ascertain whether the staff are having operational capability to respond to any health emergency, some validation exercises can also be run from time to time. And there should be a dedicated funds allocated for non-recurring and recurring cost of the PHEOC. So in the beginning, I said about that policy and legal authorization. So those two components should cover that up. Next slide, please. So here comes again on the essential components that the frameworks talks about for establishing, maintaining, and running of PHEOC at any place, national or subnational or regional level. So you can see all these what we talked about, and the in charge or the manager for running PHEOC should have monitoring and evaluation plan. So whatever in situ infrastructures related items are there, or the capacities, existing capacities are there, uh, they should be reviewed from time to time so that the PHEOC can run smoothly and efficiently. Next slide, please. So Anil, please, next slide. So for more information, you may like to browse through the links that were shown in the previous slide. Yeah. So this will apprise you about the incident management system, PHEOC, and also the trainings available for PHEOC, and